Hello, viewers. I am recording a video to walk you through the 30-point checklist that we go through when we run retention audits here at Common Thread Collective. So you can see on my screen that we are looking at the website for FC Goods. This is the brand that we will be using for this audit illustration today. So before we dive into an actual audit and kind of the step-by-step checklist that we go through, the first thing that we always want to do when we're evaluating a new brand is get to know a little bit about the brand. So get an understanding of how they talk about themselves on their website, what their product assortment looks like, and sort of what the typical user would encounter when they come to their site for the first time. So taking a look at the FC Goods site, we can see that they make vintage baseball glove handcrafted wallets. That's not all that they make. They actually have some accessories as well. So we just kind of want to go through the site and get an idea of any UVPs that might be present, the product assortment, and just typical subscriber experience if you were to come to the site. So I usually like to start at the About Us page just to get an understanding of the origins of a brand and how they talk about themselves so that when we go to do the email audit, we have a really good understanding of how well this story actually gets captured within their email campaigns. I also like to take a look at the product assortment. So obviously from the homepage, we know that FC Goods does recycled baseball glove wallets. That's kind of their hero collection, but they do have some accessories here as well in the form of keychains, toiletry bags, belts, and other items. Another thing that I've noticed here, just spending a little bit of time on the site, is that they have a couple of items that are sold out. Oh, and there's their pop-up. But focusing on the collections page first, they do have a couple of items that are sold out. So this is an indication to me that they might run through product. And so that gives us an early idea of some potential flows that we might want to put in place to support these sorts of events that occur on the site. So diving into the actual audit itself, the number one thing that we want to look at are some Esp basics when we start the audit. So first and foremost, has the Esp been integrated with the site backend? We're looking at a Klaviyo instance here. So if you go into the integration section, you can see here that they are integrated with their Shopify site. And then we want to make sure that they've got a product catalog coming in, which you can also see in the data feeds section here. So yep, we've got a product catalog coming in. And when we look at the Shopify connection, we can see that they are automatically collecting on-site events. So that just indicates to us that we will be able to tell within the Esp, and we will be able to trigger based on events around cart abandon, browse abandon, purchase, any of those other kind of common customer behaviors on a website. So from there, the next thing that we want to take a look at is their contact capture tactics. So typically what I do here is open a new incognito window so that I can see how a user that is coming to the site for the first time will experience the collection methods. So we saw that pop-up trigger a little bit earlier. Looks like it is on a bit of a time delay. But upon site landing, we see this offer come up for a free FC Goods wallet. When we're looking at the pop-up method that's in use for capture, we really want to understand if an incentive is present for signing up, if the creative is compelling, and get an idea of kind of the trigger rules around the setup to see if there's any opportunity for us there. We can see here that they are doing a giveaway. Now, typically, I would not recommend doing giveaways. We often see lead quality can be low when somebody is signing up for the promise of a freebie. In this case, I don't know. I haven't gotten into the Esp to see how folks are converting to determine if that's working for them well or not. I would say it's pretty compelling creative. Definitely makes me want to click to sign up. And from here, I can enter my email address and submit and see that I will be notified by email if I am a winner. Of course, the issue there is that we're not getting any initial incentive to kind of grease the wheels to make that early conversion. And there's not really any reason for me to go to my inbox to see what they've sent me in communication there, because I'm probably not going to hear right away if I've won. So overall, probably some opportunities to do a little bit of testing there. Now, the other things that we want to take a look at in terms of capture are some of the other on-site instances. Usually we want to see something in the header or footer. We see that here. That's great. Typically, I would go through and sign up here too, just to make sure that everything is flowing into the Esp and that I'm getting put into the appropriate welcome flow. We also want to make sure that they have an opportunity to sign up within the cart. So from here, I'm just going to add a typical item to the cart here, start the checkout process. Perfect. And here, when we get into the cart, we can see that they are collecting email address, which is pretty standard for any e-commerce purchase. And then they've got this checkbox here to get automated text messages. So that indicates to me that they may be doing some sort of SMS. So you can see down here that they're collecting phone numbers for potentially SMS collection. Unfortunately, they are not indicating that express consent is being collected for email addresses. So we could be running into some compliance issues here if folks haven't given explicit permission to mail marketing messages based on providing their email address at checkout. So just another thing to be aware of there. So that pretty much covers the contact capture section. From there, we would take a look at what they've got going within their automation. So once again, in Klaviyo, if we go to the flows section of their ESP, we can see all of the flows that they've got live or that are staged within their Klaviyo account. So we can see, based on these little green indicators, that they've got some of the basics, a welcome series, abandonment flows, and then a customer thank you, which would be a post-purchase flow. So overall, when we're auditing for automation, we're looking for some of these key flows to be live, specifically a welcome flow, a cart abandon flow, a browse abandon flow, and a post-purchase flow. Now we'll dig into each of these a little bit more specifically. So with a welcome offer, we want to make sure that folks are flowing in as intended. So we would have tested that on the site and checked within an inbox to confirm that that was actually happening. And then from there, we want to get an idea of who qualifies for the flow, how quickly they're receiving it, if there's any delays between touches and how long they are, if the messaging is doing what's intended with a welcome flow, so effectively onboarding new subscribers and educating them about the brand and the assortment of products on offer. So with this particular welcome series, we can see that there's no delay before they get that first message, which is perfect. We want to alleviate anxiety from the sign-up process by triggering an email immediately so that folks know they made it onto the list. They'll continue to hear about any marketing opportunities and that they will find out if they're the winner of that free wallet. We can also see here that there are a few messages in the flow, looks like 6 specifically. So that's a pretty good number. Usually we would recommend starting with 3 to 5 and monitoring how engagement tracks throughout the flow. Here you can see that they are kicking off with a 42% open rate, 5% click rate. By the time we get down to the last message, we're at a 19% open rate and a 3% click rate. So that's quite a downward trend. It's to be expected, but we would want to maybe take a look at how this compares to their campaign messages to determine if it's worth keeping them in the flow this long. The other thing that we want to take a look at is whether or not the offer is present, if they have provided an incentive for sign up. So in this case, they provided the free wallet giveaway as an incentive. When we go to look at the first touch, we are not actually seeing anything indicated about that. So they're thanking us for stopping by. There's a nice note from the founder, which is great, but it's not making good on that incentive. So it's definitely something that we would want to promote here as well, to speak to the fact that, hey, you signed up to get a free wallet. Here's a great reason to stay subscribed to email. This is how you're going to find out about it. Now, looking at the other touches in the flow, they're doing a really good job of talking about their story, their background, making it a little bit personal, but there's definitely some opportunity for them to do a better job of merchandising their products within each of these messages. So this link to shop products means that you're going to probably get dumped on an all products category page. And so you're several clicks away from completing a purchase. We know that wallets are their hero product. So there's definitely more that we could do to speak to the wallets, or at least break the creative out so that there's some merchandising that will get us to those key landing pages and shorten that path to purchase. The other thing that we want to take a look at when we're looking at this flow is whether or not people can continue to receive campaigns while they're in it. And it looks like here we don't have any filters for that. So folks will drop out of this series if they place an order, which is great, but they're not suppressed from receiving campaigns, which means that if There are ad hoc deployments going out that are talking about the product, about seasonal events, about sales. Users could receive those as well as this flow. And that would mean that maybe they're getting multiple messages in a day, which is not an ideal subscriber experience. So definitely want to look at opportunities to tighten that up. So that's it for the welcome flow. Moving on to abandoned checkout. We're going through a lot of the same things within this flow. So just getting an understanding of how it operates, how it's performing, and making sure that the content is really on point and that it's going to do what it is intended to do, which is to get people back to their cart to convert. So first and foremost, looking at the delay before the first message, we can see here that it's 1 hour. That's fantastic. The Klaviyo template defaults to 4 hours, which we found to be a little bit too long. Typically, we see 1 to 2 hours for retailers is a great starting point for optimal timing to get people back to that cart quickly while the product is still top of mind. From there, we're going to take a look again at how many messages are in the flow. You can see here there's 5, 6 that are live. A couple of these are drafts, so they're not triggering. That's quite a few messages for a cart flow, but we are seeing that the open and click rates are remaining high through the end of it. With a product like this, where we know from the brand that it's commonly used as a gifting opportunity, it's not necessarily a brand where you're going to get people coming back and shopping around for multiple products. So in this case, a 6-touch flow to try to get people to come back and make that purchase before they select a gift for somebody someplace else is probably a pretty decent sweet spot. From there, we're going to dive into how many messages, if the messages are inclusive of dynamic content to showcase something that a user added to their cart but did not purchase. So we can see here within this kind of blank space that that's where that dynamic content would show up. That's something that you can dig into by looking at the code and the actual structure of the message. But overall, great to see that the product is going to dynamically display so that we can instantly provide a recall for a user. Hey, you were interested in this product, come back and complete your order. They've also got really great customer service nod here. So letting people know that they're there to help if they need somebody's opinion on selecting the right product, if they have questions about how quickly it will get fulfilled, if they're going to be using it as a gift. So great to see that in here as well. Now we can also see that a little bit further down the flow, they are giving 10% off to motivate people to complete their order. That's definitely a great opportunity to kind of, again, grease those wheels in the checkout flow, providing that incentive and removing a little bit of friction from that consideration phase. Definitely glad to see that it's showing up a little bit further down in the flow. Oftentimes with a cart flow, it's just a gentle nudge that's needed to get people to come back and convert. So you don't want to sacrifice that margin if you don't have to. So good to see that they've got that here. Definitely some opportunity to potentially do some testing, maybe free shipping versus 10% off, maybe $1 off versus a percentage off. So still some opportunity here. Also good opportunity to potentially, again, do more with your merchandising down here. So rather than speaking to broad categories, speak to specific products and link back to those landing pages. Awesome. So from there, we would move on to the browse abandon flow. Similar story here, not going to spend a ton of time on this flow, but we just want to make sure that they have got a browse flow in place to capture people who may have viewed a product but not carted it yet. So again, taking a look at the delay, the number of touches, the creative, and making sure that it's doing what it's intended to do. In this case, the browse abandon flow is quite long. So we do see that the engagement is dropping off quite a bit. And as we get towards some of these lower touches, the open and click rates are falling probably around where their campaigns might land. So it's definitely worth evaluating whether or not this flow needs to be tightened up a little bit because they may not be getting as much juice for the squeeze here. And then last but not least, we would be taking a look at their post-purchase flow. So here we can already see that we've got some really good branching logic happening, which makes me happy to see. So really what we're looking for in a post-purchase flow is, A, are we confirming that that order went through right away? We can see that there's no delay node here. So definitely good to see that. We also want to understand how the messaging is helping to build a relationship with a new subscriber. So are we thanking them for their purchase? Are we asking them to leave a review? Are we offering a timely bounce back incentives that they'll come back and make a second purchase? Are we promoting a refer a friend program if that's present as well? So those are all things that we would want to dig into. One thing that I did want to call attention to here that's a good thing to take a look at when we're auditing flows is how many users are actually receiving the emails versus getting skipped. So in this particular instance here, this is the branch for people who have ordered once and indicated that it was a gift for someone else. So this first message here, you can see is delivering as intended. Only 3 people were skipped. We could dig into the 3 people if we needed to, but for the purposes of this exercise, I want to call your attention to the next email, which shows 156 people skipped. So clicking into that, we can actually go to the recipient activity report here and click on skipped. And we can see here that 44 people were skipped because they were over an email limit. So some frequency caps that were in place on the account. But the more concerning one is they're unable to create a coupon. So in this case, they're using a dynamic coupon generation in order to give that bounce back incentive, but they probably ran out of dynamic coupon codes or there was some other error in the account. And because the coupon couldn't be created, the user was just skipped. So that's definitely something that we want to dig into because the flow is not operating as intended and people are missing out on a really great opportunity to get an incentive to come back and make a second purchase simply because of a coupon code error. So definitely something that we would want to dig into and correct very quickly. So outside of those key flows, just going back to sort of this flow library here, we would want to get an understanding of what other foundational flows are in place to support all touch points of the customer journey. So it looks like they have a win back in here, but it's not currently live. That's definitely a missed opportunity for any client that has, or excuse me, customer who has made a purchase but hasn't come back within a certain time frame, maybe 60 to 90 days, depending on the typical repurchase rate for your customers. You definitely want to leverage an email win back as an opportunity to reactivate those folks and get them to come back to the site and explore any new products that you may have launched since they last checked it out. We'd also want to make sure that there's a re-engagement flow live so that anyone who has signed up for emails but has failed to open or click is again getting another one of those reactivation efforts. One of the key opportunities to scale an email program is through list growth. So you want to make sure that you are maintaining as many subscribers as possible and continuing to add to the list over time so that your audience is getting larger and larger, and that helps you to broaden your reach and to eventually generate more revenue from your email program. Outside of that, we definitely want to see some additional flows around particular milestones. So perhaps a birthday, a purchase anniversary, maybe if you have a VIP program in place, or you just want to reward people for making a certain number of purchases, some of those other levers that we can use to drive loyalty. So in this instance, they've got some really great foundational flows in place, but there are a number of things that are missing that could be launched to support more phases of the customer journey and really set this program up for success. So now that we've gotten through the automations, we want to take a look at their campaigns. So within Klaviyo, if you navigate to the campaign section, you can see a laundry list of emails that have been sent. This view is really great because you can get a lot of information in one quick snapshot. The number one thing that we want to take a look at is how often are broadcast campaigns deploying? So with this account in particular, we can see that they were doing a lot around the holidays, which is great. They're a gifting brand, so it makes a ton of sense. But if we scroll back to the top, we can see nothing happened between December 23rd and February 10th. So of course, the automation is continuing to trigger in the background, but if you're not navigating to the site or taking any sort of those qualifying activities or behaviors, you're not going to receive any emails for over a month from this brand. Now that's concerning. A, it's a missed revenue opportunity. B, you're not staying top of mind with users who could have had other opportunities for gifting or wanted to purchase something for themselves. Bigger scare here is deliverability. So ISPs are looking at not only your reputation, and all of your authentication when they're evaluating whether or not your email should go to the inbox or the spam folder, but they're also looking for major peaks and valleys in your volume. So if you are sending a bunch of batch campaigns in December and then nothing for an entire month, and then you pick back up again, that can send some kind of spammy vibes. So definitely want to take a look at opportunities to make the cadence here a little bit more predictable. It creates a better subscriber experience, and it's just healthier. So with this particular brand, definitely want to get them onto more of a regular cadence. Outside of that, we just want to understand what's the mix of messages that are happening here. How much of it is promotional? How much of it is content related? How many new product launches do they have? Sort of what are the reasons that we're reaching out to subscribers to speak to them? And is there a nice mix? Are we always discounting or pushing sales, or are we providing a little bit more value, more newness, more interest? Are we making sure that we're only messaging them when it makes sense to message them? Now, we also want to make sure that the creative is well merchandised. So that's something we touched on a little bit in the flows, but taking a look at just a couple of examples here. Obviously, this campaign promotes digital gift cards. This is for last minute gifters around the holidays. So pretty straightforward. All you're trying to sell here is a gift card. I would say this is merchandised pretty well. I would, however, indicate that there's quite a bit of copy here. It could be pared down in order to make it a little bit more skimmable and get people back to the site and shopping quickly. I would certainly pull this 2 days left until Christmas message out, potentially into a top banner here to create some additional urgency. Same story here for last chance to get upgraded shipping. Again, this is a really timely offer. They're doing a pretty good job with the urgency here, but there could be more merchandising done here. So certainly could have some banners underneath with wallets or accessories or belts or any of those key popular products, maybe different styles of wallets, maybe categorizing it based on the type of person who would want that type of wallet. So there's definitely more opportunity to kind of display the breadth of products here and make sure that we are shortening the number of clicks that people have to take to get to checkout. And then last up, we've got a back in stock message here for the Trifold wallet. They do a good job of kind of speaking to urgency around Christmas once again. There's probably more that we can do to speak to the benefits of this product, potentially doing some diagramming to show exactly how many pockets there are and really sell the value of this particular wallet. The other thing that I would call out is that a back in stock message is a great thing to automate. If you currently have products that are going in and out of stock really frequently, it's a lot of manual work to create a back in stock moment. There's also a lot of opportunity to target people when inventory is low. So you can create triggers around low inventory to target people who have browsed a product within the last 30 to 60 days, but haven't purchased it, to indicate, hey, you were interested in this product. It's about to go out of stock. So good automation opportunity there outside of just reviewing this from the calendar perspective. The other thing that we're always looking for as well is that these emails are error-free. I would say in these three instances, they are. We didn't find any issues with typos, with misinformation. All of the links worked. We checked the alt text. That's all accurate. So that's kind of just a housekeeping thing. Email 101, make sure that it's not riddled with errors, because once it goes out, we cannot take it back. So outside of kind of just looking at the general creative from these campaigns, we do want to understand the performance of subject lines as well. So how are the subject lines doing to entice opens? What can we glean from an open rate to understand how compelling particular messages are? How are the subject lines working in tandem with the pre-headers? So making sure that any of the preview text that's indicated is actually complementary, that it's not wasted. We also want to make sure that there's effective messaging hierarchy. So in this case, they've got a good headline and then some body copy and then a CTA. It's pretty good messaging hierarchy all around. You kind of understand where you're supposed to be reading, what you maybe want to skim over, where you're supposed to click to get back to the site. We also want to make sure that there's CTAs present throughout the email. This is a pretty short email, so they've just got the one down here. I would say, however, that we typically want to see at least one CTA above the fold, so would want to preview this on a mobile device to determine where that button is landing and if there's more that we can do to drive traffic back to the site. We also want to see that the layouts are varying from send to send so that subscribers don't get fatigued from seeing the same design over and over again. Now, the photography changes from message to message here, but it's all kind of the same look and feel overall. You've got the hero image, the headline, the body copy, and then the button. So I definitely recommend infusing some different layouts and different templates to maintain visual interest and keep people opening and scrolling through your emails. The other thing we want to look at for campaigns is if there's any dynamic content present, to add a layer of personalization into campaigns. Now, in these specific instances, there aren't. There might be some throughout other campaigns, but there's definitely really good opportunity, even just in a day-to-day send, to include dynamic product recommendations based on something that someone has browsed in the past. We've also seen a lot of really good success for people who have signed up to receive signed up for the email list, but have not yet converted, to include some sort of welcome message or reiterate an incentive. Now, in the case of FC Goods, they're doing a free wallet giveaway, so there's not really anything to talk about. I would recommend that we test something like a 10% sign-up offer, because then for any non-purchaser in any email, we can dynamically hide or display a banner at the top that says you still have a welcome offer available for 10% off that you can take advantage of. So finding those little opportunities to add that personalization into an everyday, day-to-day email can really increase the engagement that you see there. Now, we also want to make sure that these emails are going to render well on desktop and mobile. So I won't go into that now, but would typically send a live test of a message to myself and check it in my inbox on my phone, on a tablet, as well as in the desktop, just to see that it's rendering well, that it's scaling as expected, and that it's not a wonky experience on any particular platform. We also want to make sure that things are rendering well in dark mode. There are preview tools available to test this, but if you don't have access to one of those, simply turning on or off dark mode on your phone or on a tablet can be really helpful to get an indication of how that might show up for people who have dark mode activated. I personally have dark mode activated on my phone, and it is alarming to say how many email marketers are not doing anything about it, and how many emails display really horrifically poorly in dark mode. So definitely something worth checking. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that things are loading quickly. So when you go to open an email for the first time, especially on a mobile device, how quickly are those images rendering? Are they too big and therefore taking a really long time to load? People have a really short attention span. They're not going to wait for things to load on their phone. They expect good speed these days. So you're likely to end up in the trash if you don't have your images downsized appropriately so that they're loading really quickly across devices. So that is it for the creative side of things. Next up, we take a look at list health and segmentation. So once again, taking a look at the campaign section here, we can see exactly what list or segment each one of these campaigns is going to. So here we can see that for the most part, this brand is using segments for users who have engaged in the last 4 months or the last 6 months. That's great to see. We never want to see a brand using a static list where people can age out, stop opening, and they're not getting cleaned off of that list. So using a segment that is based on recency of engagement is a really good way to make sure that you're only messaging to people who are still interested in receiving your emails, as indicated by the fact that they have purchased or opened an email recently. Now, from there, we would want to take a look at the specifics of each segment. So getting an idea, specifically, first and foremost, the size of each of these segments. So if you click onto any segment, it'll get you taken into this list and segment section, and you can take a look at the total contact count based on all of the different segments that they already have created. So we can see here, people who've engaged in the last 4 months, there's about 54,000. Last 6 months, it's about 58,000. So Usually from there, we would want to dig into a couple of the key segments to get an idea of how the size is changing over time. So you can run engagement reports to get an understanding of the increase in contacts versus the churn to make sure that the new contact signups are outpacing people who are churning either through unsubscribes actively or because they fail to engage and so they fall off that segment. We also want to make sure that the engagement parameters are set up properly and that they're working as expected. So looking at their engaged 4-month segment, we can see they have it set up that if you've opened, clicked, placed an order, or were active on the site within the last 120 days, you're still qualified to receive emails. So that's great. They're also making sure that if you were created in the last 14 days, that you are getting emails. So that's perfect. We never want to exclude new subscribers simply because they haven't had an opportunity to open an email yet. So good to see that that's in there as well. And then, of course, don't mail to people who don't want to hear from you. If a user is suppressed because they are unsubscribed or they have bounced too many times, you don't want to keep emailing them. It's going to diminish your deliverability and it's illegal. So making sure that you are not mailing to people who are suppressed is key here as well. And then certainly want to take a look at how well segmentation is being leveraged. I think just going back to this list here, we can see that there's a few order updates, a few people who've signed up for back-end stock messaging who are getting more tailored messages. But a lot of this stuff is kind of going to the same batched list. That's not necessarily bad. It's just an indication that there's opportunity to do more. So can we segment based on purchase behavior? Should we be looking at people who've engaged in the last 4 months, but breaking it up by customers versus non-customers? Do we have any demographic data? Do we have any first-party data? Anything else that we can do to segment based on our understanding of who the customer is and what messaging might compel them to convert? So again, nothing super alarming here, just a lot of opportunity that still exists. Now, we spoke a little bit about deliverability and how to mitigate some of those list health issues around a consistent cadence and mailing based on engagement. We also just want to make sure that emails are landing in the inbox. So whenever I'm doing an audit, I'll do live tests. I will send previews to myself to see how things look in the inbox, but it's also great just to sign up for email on the site, see what comes into your inbox, make sure it actually lands in the inbox, and if not, check your spam folder to see if it's landing there. We also want to make sure that we have healthy engagement rates. So from here, we will go back to the dashboard and we can take a look at analytics. So it takes a little bit to load, but this business health check dash that's in the Klaviyo reporting section has a lot of the key metrics that you need to be paying attention to. So when we're looking at deliverability, we want to make sure that we're seeing really strong unsubscribe and spam complaint rates. And by strong, I mean low. So in this case, when we're looking at unsubscribe rates by email type, we can see that it's on a steady decline, which is great. So we're doing a good job of sending email that people want to receive. However, it's a little bit high. On average, we want to see the unsubscribe rate below 0.5% for the entire account. It's again on a downward trajectory, so that's good to see, but we've got almost 1% of people from flows who are opting out of emails and about 0.5% from campaigns. So that's definitely something that we would want to dig into a little bit further. Is there one flow in particular that's annoying, or we're seeing a lot of people unsubscribing from a particular touch? Maybe they're in that flow too long. I would say the first thing I would look at with this account is that browse flow is really, really long. Are they unsubscribing because they're sick of getting messages about the same item that they viewed but didn't convert from the 6th, 7th, 8th time? So just an opportunity to dig in a little bit further there. The other concerning thing here is the spam complaint rate, which is on an upward trajectory. So we want to make sure spam complaint rates are as low as humanly possible, because that's a really good way to land yourself in the spam folder. So again, this is something where I would want to dig into what's the source of this. Was it a particular campaign? Is it a particular audience that's maybe too broad? Is there a particular flow that's really annoying people? So that's just an opportunity to dig in a little bit more fully. We also want to make sure that emails are sending from a dedicated subdomain. That's another best practice for deliverability. So you can see from, let's just look at a particular campaign. Here we go. If you click into any campaign report, you can see who it's coming from. So we can see here it's coming directly from their root domain of fcgoods.com. So that's a little bit concerning because that's probably the email address that they're using for their entire, or the domain that they're using for email addresses for their entire staff. So if something bad were to happen where maybe they aren't following deliverability best practices, maybe they get too many spam complaints, and you get added to a blacklist here, that's going to affect your ability to actually send and receive emails to your staff's email addresses too. So we definitely always recommend a dedicated sending domain. It could be as simple as email.fcgoods.com, but always want to see that separated so that if you do have issues within your email marketing program, that it's not affecting anything else operationally for your team. So finally, the last section that we want to take a look at is reporting. So first and foremost, want to make sure that your UTM tracking is set up properly so that if you're using GA or some other business analytics tool to evaluate the success of your program, that everything is tracking consistently. So within the account section of Klaviyo, you can actually look at your UTM tracking and set it up to automatically append tracking to all of the links in your emails. Highly, highly, highly recommend that you do this for consistency and to ensure that everything gets tracked. Here you can see how things are assigned. This is customizable if you want to change it for tracking on your end, but really important to keep in mind that if you are using the campaign ID or campaign names within the UTMs, that you need to be specific about it. So if you are building flows for welcome and you name it email 1, email 2, email 3, and then you're building a flow for cart and it's email 1, email 2, email 3. That can get a little muddy within GA depending on the view that you're looking at. So definitely recommend that you get as specific as possible when it comes to the naming convention there. Also want to just make sure that revenue and conversions are being tracked within the ESP so that you can understand the success or failure rate for certain campaigns. So once again, within the analytics tab, we can see here that revenue that's attributed and placed orders that attributed are flowing in. So typically, if you've got your Shopify integration set up properly, you'll be seeing all of that here. And then, of course, want to make sure that all of these key KPIs are in a healthy range. We talked already about spam complaint rate and unsubscribe rates. I'm not going to get too granular in benchmarks because it kind of depends on the vertical that you're in, but there's a lot of great resources online that have open click and conversion rate benchmarks based on product type or industry. So definitely encourage you to seek those out when comparing your metrics. But overall, average monthly open rate at 28.6%. I am sure that that is above benchmarks. Typically for retailers, we're seeing something in the neighborhood of 15 to 20%. Click-through rate sitting at 8%. That's really healthy as well. Usually we're seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 12. And then the placed order rate here is the number one most concerning metric here. I believe the benchmark for placed order rate for e-com retailers is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2%. And with this one sitting at 0.18, that's definitely an opportunity for us to do more with the email marketing program to increase purchase intent and make sure that we're getting those conversions. Typically, we'd also want to take a look at Google Analytics and understand what % of site revenue is coming from email or SMS or owned channels collectively. So typically, we want to see email accounting for somewhere between 20 to 30%. Kind of depends on how optimized your site is for SEO and therefore what kind of organic traffic you're getting. And then certainly what's your investment look like across other paid channels and what's the share coming from maybe an affiliate program that you have running. But typically 25% is a pretty good sweet spot for email revenue, just to make sure that you are really taking full advantage of this incredibly cost-effective channel to drive revenue for the brand. Now, last but not least, and that's not something that I can showcase with FC Goods, is we would want to make sure that we're reviewing an SMS program as well. So SMS is an incredibly powerful platform for driving revenue for a retail brand, and it is made even more powerful when it is cohesively integrated with email marketing. So we go through a lot of the same things for an SMS audit that we do for email. So making sure that they've got really good capture tactics in place on the site, ensuring that they've got a really good welcome flow in place and it's optimized. Same with cart and browse if that functionality is available within the SMS platform that they're using, and that they're using broadcast campaigns effectively and respectfully. So typically, customers don't want to hear from you via text as often as they would via email. So we really recommend 1 to 2 broadcast campaigns a month, segmenting as much as possible, and making sure you're really only pinging them via SMS when it's worth it. The other thing to keep in mind with SMS is that it's going to send a notification to someone's phone. If you're anything like me, you sleep with your phone right next to you. So really important to make sure that you are following a quiet hours protocol. A lot of SMS vendor platforms have this functionality in place to apply to the entire program so that no SMS messages will go out between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. at the recipient's local time zone. So definitely recommend that level of respect. You are going to fast track your unsubscribes if you are sending SMS messages overnight, I can assure you. And then outside of that, really just understanding how is SMS working in conjunction with email. So we really want to think about how to play to the strengths of each channel. So SMS is really great for short, timely, quick call to actions and urgent messages. So maybe a cart abandonment flow, letting people know about early access for a sale, messaging the final hours of a sale, giving VIPs access to a new product that's just launching, things of that nature. Whereas email marketing is much more effective for visual storytelling and longer form storytelling. Email messages get revisited more often than SMS messages do. So it's a really key use cases between the two. But once you kind of get a handle on it, it's pretty intuitive. Overall, however, we just want to make sure that you're not sending the exact same message via SMS and via email at the same time. It is highly likely that you will have subscribers who are engaging with you on both channels. So we really want to make sure that you're not just duplicating efforts and blasting people in 2 locations with the same message at the same time. So that's about it for the audit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me personally at mandy@commonthreadco.com. Thanks.